Good morning, and I am over the moon excited to introduce my friend and colleague and someone I deeply admire, Heidi Warren. And Heidi is speaking to us today from the Yukon in Canada. And Heidi is an educator extraordinaire, a child-led coach, and a former principal in a very unique educational setting in the far north of Canada. And so I welcome you, Heidi, to this conversation.
Thank you, Kim. I'm honored to be here with you, and I mirror back all of the things you said about me to you about you.
Oh. I am thinking about trauma sensitive education and the fact that teachers are heading back to school and that this summer break it's essential for educators. And as I know in my own personal experience, having a break doesn't actually feed regulation and my state of being when I return back into work. It's not like I can fill my bank account and then go into the setting and draw from back there. I have to continuously look after myself in the work that I do.
Mhm.
And educators have amongst the most important work in the world and amongst the hardest work in the world. And so I'm just curious what your view about trauma sensitive education is and how you think it is relevant for teachers in the classroom every day.
Mm. I really feel those words that you said about you can't bank the regulation and connection that you felt over whatever break, summer break, Christmas break. And I always wished I could, and I always intended to, which I think was always part of the struggle of transition back into school for me. It's like, okay, the excitement, and I'm ready, and who are my kids, and it is very exciting and scary.
Mm.
And I've had, this past couple of weeks heading back into work over Christmas break, I remember very explicitly that exact thing happening of feeling so good, so connected, and within 2 days or less, being completely derailed to the point of like it's hard to get out of bed in the morning. It's
Mm.
like a depth of difficulty that it was really unexpected. And so that's one thing is like how I it took working with your team so many times to really understand what taking care of myself in every moment meant. And it is self-care is a word that teachers well, me anyway, want to just like never say again. Like who has time for self-care in the classroom? So we try and bank it, and then if you have anything outside of school interrupts that. And when I really started to learn the embodiment of every single moment of being able to take care of myself, that made the difference
Mm.
in my life and my well-being and propelled me into a work of well-being for educators. And a- and in saying that, trauma sensitive education, I think when I first started to learn about it, was this extra responsibility, even heavier than the academic. Like I'm responsible for their growth and well-being and the way teaching them on, the way they'll be in the world. They go back into the world and that things I have no control over, and the pressure of that felt so heavy until I really started to learn from you and your team of what that really meant, that that it's not an extra curriculum or an extra program or an extra thing I have to do. And I actually have to do it for me.
Mm.
And then I can be curious about others. If I'm taking care of myself, then I have more space to be curious about others in trauma sensitive education, and that it is the foundation for absolutely anything else.
Wow. Whew. How amazingly reflected back. in the idea that this knowing isn't about fixing. It's not about fixing. And I think educators, your sense of responsibility of what you need to impart in on download, I think of watering can into the brains and beings of your students for their lifespan. And the feeling of the duty, intensity, and also the desire to want to do that. And trauma sensitive awareness means coming alongside your students in a relationship with them in an accompanying way, not to fix them, but to meet them where they
Mm,
are. And that this is really where ironically, the shift happens, is in that state of curiosity that you describe. And this we call it trauma sensitive education instead of trauma informed education, because trauma informed is a bunch of concepts that live up here, and trauma sensitive is in you, right?
yeah.
It
Yeah.
becomes you.
Mhm.
And you're right. The classroom has never been seen as a place historically as having an emphasis on relational aspects of learning, where curriculum often seems to be the priority rather than them being in partnership. That's changing, but
Mhm.
it is part of the history of how we think of pedagogy.
Mhm. That just made me think of, as I talk to educators, I realize how long we have been saying, "Have a relationship with your students," and 99.9% of educators do.
Do. Yes.
It's not about that you and I think sometimes for me anyways, it landed when I would hear people talk about that when as an educator and a principal, I thought, I do. Like some of my roles were with the most difficult students who had who nobody else wanted in their classroom because they were fear of aggression, verbally for sure aggression, all teenagers. So, which is even a bit scarier sometimes, is scarier for adults. And I would hear that and think, but I do have a relationship. I do care about them. I do love them. And that fueled my want to download all because in my training and understanding, this will make their life better if they know more. So I do think there is a shift now, but I just had that epiphany of like, oh, I did like to we know educators have relationships. It's how we are showing up in those relationships that
Exactly.
is the difference that I learned about. Yeah.
Beautifully said, because I think it's so easy to feel defended by that statement, right? Have a relationship with your students, which may translate in the mind of an educator to you need to care about your kids. And very rarely is that not the case. Relational quality is the tuning fork that lights up the brain for the readiness to learn.
Did you
I
see my
think,
brain just light up? Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And so I think when educators get that sort of connection, that their attunement to and their knowing and meeting their students where they're at actually is like a light bulb that ignites the brain of their student, that is foundational to the structures needed to read, needed to be able to do math, needed to be able to do academic attentional processes. And that's where the buy-in comes in. I hate that word buy-in, but that's where the buy-in comes in. Oh, the intentional sensitive connection actually helps me get what I need from my student rather than becoming an extra thing to do.
Mhm, and gives me and them what they need to truly succeed, like, to truly feel good and succeed. That's the key, a as you say, and, it's very, very difficult to remember that throughout the day as things are, and when you were speaking, I thought about when I'm teaching, when I've been teaching students, and I can see they want so badly, not all of them, but they want to do what I'm asking them to do. And it's a can't.
Yes.
Like they just can't do it. And how I'm showing up for for a variety of reasons, what which you talk about in the trauma sensitive course that I've taken and that you provide, a lot of those reasons. And when I show up and they're reading that I'm like my energy or my state of connecting, but even before I'm fully connecting, I'm already moving to like, we need to get this done
Yeah.
for both of us to feel better. And
Oh,
that's a very tricky spot and you've got 20 to 30 students in front of you that you're trying to do that with.
and that's there's so many voices. I don't mean from a mental health perspective. I mean from an inner dialogue. So many voices at work in the mind of the teacher, of competing demands that, shift and change moment by moment and increase in a collective way to create a real significant amount of stress. And so I think educators' self-compassion is critical, in that I'm doing the best that I can with what I have, and and that each minute is another moment of opportunity.
Hmm. Yeah, like I think of those moments of you're in your classroom and whatever's happening, and the principal walks in, or a
Yes, exactly.
walks
Yeah.
by, or I constantly think of our educational assistants who are with some of, the students who need the absolute most attunement and are probably difficult to attune to, depending on how you show up. And the pressure that I've heard people talk about, I haven't been in the position of an EA, but I've heard many EAs say they're working with this student and they feel like they need to be doing something because they're often in very public, where people are walking by. So there's this story we're saying, like, they're going to think I'm not doing anything. And sometimes people say things like that. Like, what are you doing? You're just hanging out and playing, or you're just whatever. And I have felt that many, many times, and I still can. And the shift of feeling that pressure being unintentionally put onto the student, they feel it.
Yes.
And my ability now, after a number of years of practice, of being able to have that. I remember a moment where a teacher, I was coming in to observe and support, and they said to me, the student was starting to do the behavior that they had talked about, and they said, "You go do something
Yeah.
and let me see what you
You
do."
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I said, "Well, I'll go and I will just be and see what happens. I have no magic anything. I just have the gift of not feeling the pressure." But I did for a moment. I was like, "Yeah, I got to go do something." And I thought, if I show up like that, this will be terrible with the student.
But what you just did, Heidi, was magnificent example of interruption, of an inner judgment thought process that is affective. We use the word therapeutically, the word affectively. It's communicated through your body language, through your visual engagement, through your vocal tone. What is happening inside of us is revealed outside of us and perceived by the receiver's brain, the student's brain. And that capacity to authentically say, hey, um, that's a big challenge you've just given me. I feel a little bit nervous about that challenge, likely because it came from a challenging space. Hey, you try. I can't do this. You do this, right?
Hmm.
And being able to say, I recognize how challenging this is for you. I'm feeling it right now too. And that then that in that moment of being the coach to the teacher, your shift also resonates with them, not just with the student, which is tricky. Mm-hmm.
Very tricky. That meeting each other in that, right? That energy. And um my tolerance as an adult is I have infinite almost amounts for children.
Yes.
The older they get, the smaller that gets for me, my tolerance. And becoming a principal, I really learned that because I thought being a principal was, running a school, but dealing with the kids who get sent to the principal's office, those ones that I love, that I really like to connect with, and because I was one of them. And and what I learned was it's actually the adults that I needed to have the um I don't want it to sound condescending when I say the same strategies, because they're not strategies. What it was I showed up in an adult relationship with very different expectations of that person.
Yes.
With children,
It's
they don't have any, or less.
well,
Not so.
it is actually the same formula. And I
Yeah.
always say adults are children in big bodies. And it is the same formula of match, mirror, and move, which we can talk about in a minute,
Mhm.
of meeting the adult and each person that we come in contact with, whether it's a child or an adult, it's kind of like we turn towards them and meet that person, and maybe the meeting, the adult, is the way to the child, or often it's the way to the child. And I know that I'm a kid person too, Heidi, and my whole life's work is about kids. And that I often, in a clinical way, wondered, why do they have to come with parents lovingly?
Yeah.
And, that whole capacity to really deeply revere, support, and be with the adults is the game changer for kids. And that speaks to the work you do now, which is guiding teachers. And you've just spoke to me about the fact that you've been the past few days in your role sharing with teachers these concepts yourself. And what were some of the experiences you had in your dialogues with teachers?
It was really interesting. So we've learned so much from you, and through all of the courses I've done with you and the work that you've done when we've been in person and coming together and moving to higher ground with, all of those things have just been, sounds excessive, but it's true, life-changing. So it's for me, and therefore how I show up with my students, but for how I show up in my life, with my family, with my partner, it really is incredible. So a huge heartfelt thank you for that. And now I hope to be able to do that to carry that out as well, the messages and the teachings that you've given to me.
I have no
And
doubt.
and the
In
match mirror move is something that I've heard lots of feedback, and I've had lots of conversations with people they have never heard of before. And because first of all, as we talk about regulation, I'm hoping we're getting the message out that regulation is not calm. And you talk about it at length, but in a Cole's notes, it's connection to self in any emotion you're having. You can be regulated in angry, you can be regulated in grief, in joy, in all the things, and that the energy and the energy that you have matches the task that you're doing, that you need for you math, you don't actually want to be calm. You want to have a
huh,
bit of activation and juice, which I get from you all the time to do that. So that part, that regulation is not calm, was one thing that people are like, oh wow, I
oh,
did not know that. And in that, an extension of that is when we have students or anybody who are starting to elevate.
Yeah.
They're moving. If it's a scale from 1 to 10, they're 7, and they're slowly going to 8. And you, as the educator or whoever is the adult who's with them, is trying to stay calm to bring them into calm.
Yeah.
And that maybe sometimes, but there's reasons it would work, which I'm sure you could speak to, but most of the time it makes it worse.
Mm.
And then we don't know what to do.
Mm.
And that's where so what I have found is then we disconnect more. We try and get calmer, but what we're actually doing is dissociating from because we're getting worried or scared or whatever, but we haven't matched the
Mm.
intensity, which is not matching the emotion, which you have spoken to so well. So I'd like you to, because it is a tricky concept to
Mm.
meet somebody, especially maybe it's grief, but I think in schools often we really struggle with those kids who are
Ooh.
about to smash everything. Or maybe they've already smashed half the class, and you've had to evacuate the classroom. And like it's some big stuff that happens. Yeah. So,
Ah,
yeah.
thank you for speaking to it in that way. And, I just want to pause for a second because my friend Lisa Dion is invisibly sitting over here. And thinking about all of her and my collective conversations over the years around the embodied clinician and its meaning, what is the hardest thing is to feel in me what I am experiencing with you. And that's that ingredient that is often the trickiest to pause into, where I have this, and Jill Bolte Taylor calls it the 90 seconds, where that kid that's just smashed the room, and I'm calm. I'm not calm. Like, dream on. I'm either scared shitless, excuse my language, or I'm angry,
Mhm.
or I'm confused, but I am pretending to be calm in order to try to generate a shift in state in the other. But I've missed a step in resonating with the state that I'm experiencing in me is usually exactly the state that the other is experiencing. That there's a frequency. It's not that the emotion is the same. It's the intensity that's vibrating. So by attuning to myself and being honest with myself, it allows me to find the intensity within which I might begin. So the message I give might be the same. I still want the person's behavior to be different. But where I begin either slides up or slides down, dependent on what I'm connecting to here. So it really means tuning in to yourself first. And then in like a millisecond, really, you're tracking. And tracking is a tricky word because it's therapy speak.
Mhm.
But we see and get information in our brainstem, like not up here, way down here, that gives us information about their emotions and their state. Their eyes get big, their jaw is tight. Like we are getting this data that then takes me from me to you into we. And this is where you meet. So the match is a meeting, and you meet the person there first with deep presence and empathy, because what the other person really wants and needs at a human spirit level is to be felt by someone.
Mhm.
To have someone say, you get it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And this is the match. And it builds that, it's a feel. And it builds safety. It's the neuroception that Stephen Porges talks about in the polyvagal theory. That's the true sense of neuroception. And it can only happen in authenticity.
So I have a question about that. So in match, if I do it, if I'm matching someone without bringing consciousness to how I'm actually feeling, I'm meeting them, but like I'm getting entangled and going on the ride with them.
Yes.
And then everybody gets heightened
Yes.
in different ways. They might look different. I might look like I'm trying to stay calm. They might start breaking more things or spitting or whatever. As opposed to if I connect, I'm feeling these and I connect to it and bring conscious awareness to it in that split second.
Yeah.
Whew, when I get angry, my ears get hot. Whew, my ears are getting hot.
Yep.
Getting angry, connect, like
Yep.
ground to that and still feel it,
Yes.
which creates this, I envision like this wrap around so for a child, there's no edge to that. It's just explosive going everywhere, like splatter paint, right?
Yes.
Out of a paint gun. It just goes. Whereas I can come in, connect to that, and create this containment, not physically, but like emotion, an energetic
Energetic.
container of we are feeling this and I've got you.
Yes. That's
Right?
the whole purpose of
Okay.
match.
Okay. Yeah.
And I love how you just described that. And what would it, sometimes it has words and sometimes it has no words.
That was my next question because I had educators say because language is, which I've heard, you've taught me so well, goes offline first.
Yeah.
So there is no language. And I've done it at Moving to Higher Ground with children, with adults, even, if words aren't accessible or processing isn't accessible, you actually don't need to use any words at all.
Right. And I think what's really important to remember in there is that when you come here first and you acknowledge how you feel, you're already regulating it,
Hmm.
which is the invisible thread of the tuning fork influence. If I go out to you first and leave me in, then I've disconnected from me and I'm not really capable of regulating you. That's why the match is essential. Because if I'm not feeling what I'm feeling and I'm behaviorally managing you, there's no co-regulation there.
And what I feel when that's happening as an adult, and I'm sure, other kids, when I'm in a state and someone's not meeting me and I need to be met, I've had it in excitement, in anger. It makes it worse because my nervous system s- is what I've learned. I think you can clarify, senses that as dangerous.
Yes.
That's not a conscious thought, and for me, it wants to attack
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And that's highly influenced by our attachment adaptations,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
The history of our felt safety in relationships in our life across time, that we will sense the mismatch as danger. That's why I use the word match, because the mismatch
mhm,
in energetic influence is where the danger lives.
mhm. And you say attachment, so some might fight for it, some might disconnect. It depends on, everybody will react to that differently. That's just my experience, but
Yes.
um,
So the nuance that's tricky is people say, well, what's the difference between match and mirror? So mirror comes from clarity, and we're breaking this down into small little pieces of like consciousness, but it's a response. So it's an actual action.
Mm.
Okay. It moves from,
Educators love actions.
yep. But if I skip match and I move into mirror without knowing the information, that's where I'm going to not be necessarily as effective. Sometimes you'll be okay,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But if I respond from this frequency of energy, mirroring involves reflecting the person's experience back to them. And that comes through nonverbals. It comes, I'm doing it now with my eyes, with my voice, with my affective cues, but also with my words and the tone of my voice. You don't like that, do you? That was just an example.
Hmm.
Versus, wow, this is not something that you like. They have a
Mm.
different, same message, different intensity that is reflected in the match.
Hmm.
So if you're raging at me and I go, oh, you don't seem to like this very much, it's like patronizing, condescending. But
Hmm.
if I say, oh, you don't like it, I get it. I can feel how when I talk to you like that it just enrages you further. As an example.
Hmm.
So that's what I mean by using the information and dialing the tuning fork or on the radio dial in how I'm going to choose my action and my affect, whether I, go, both are empathic. Both are empathic because they come from an intention of care.
Hmm. Hmm.
And this is the difference, I think, that it is hard to get, that if I'm up with you, that then it's scary for most of us because we don't like it either.
And I had someone ask, like, if I'm doing this in a classroom,
Yeah.
am I modeling how to get like, I'm modeling this they said that they felt like they would be modeling anger,
Ah,
and they don't want anger in the
sure.
classroom.
But I, in the example I just gave you,
Mhm.
I'm not angry.
No. Yeah.
I'm affectively, energetically more elevated in my arousal, but not my emotion.
Mhm.
And that's tricky for people to understand. And that usually comes from most of us not being um, savvy. I don't know. That's not maybe my favorite word. Comfortable and savvy in our own range of emotional expansion and contraction.
I don't think we've ever I never, I don't think very many of us were taught that that's okay.
Exactly.
Good in any way, shape, or form.
But if you have a 2-year-old that is going to walk out into the middle of traffic, you're not going to say, "Oh, I don't think that's a good idea right now." You're going to say, "Stop. This is not safe." And that's still love and care. This is where the confusion comes in. That if I raise my voice, if I elevate, my energy, that I then am plugging into you or escalating you, but I'm actually meeting you, and this can only then work if you move.
Right.
And
So
that's number 3. Yeah.
mirror,
And
move.
move. You can't just match and mirror, by the way.
No.
Right? So after I've mirrored to you, what your brain goes is, okay, you get it. You're safe. I trust you. Now what? So once the connection is established, this step gently we then gently guide the person or the child towards a shift, whether that's a regulation in perspective or in behavior or in action. Just think about how the world would be different if we could do that. So moving is about providing subtle invitations for change while simultaneously respecting the person's pace and readiness. That's shift. And so sometimes that, as in each of these things you're watching, you may say to the student, I think going for a walk right now might be something helpful for you. Or you may say, come and hang out up here with me. I would feel better if you were closer to me right now. So the shifts come from the meet, where I can give you the next possible step. And all of this is trial and error.
Every time.
Every time.
And something I wanted to say about the move part, what I've experienced is sometimes, a lot of the time actually, is I say, oh, whew, now I feel that I need to
Yes.
shake my arms out, and almost always they now mirror my state and or my I'm my nervous system, and I'm showing them by modeling another way to discharge this energy, right? Is what I think.
Totally, totally. I mean, I've seen your students say, Miss Warren, you just took a breath. I think I'm going to take a breath too. Like I've seen it work.
Yeah.
That in the mirror, in the match and mirror, and then coming back, you're using action to shift the other's perspective, nervous system, and behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And then they learn. And I've had kids say to me, well, it seemed to work for you. I guess I'll try it too. They actually, if we do things like that or simple actions of, this is what I do when I don't know what to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, there's a big difference between being in the kindergarten classroom and being in the grade 10 classroom, right? The language, the way, you also are meeting the nervous system developmentally at a different place.
Mm-hmm.
So, was that helpful?
That's, yeah, incredibly helpful. And the other thing that we were talking about with educators is that, and I've had conversations over time, is about you don't have to get it right. Teachers love educators, teachers, EAs, principals, everybody in education loves to get everything right all the time.
Well, my first thought, my feeling in my body when you said that was absolute terror.
Yeah.
At the level of perfectionism as well as pressure and the vibration that puts out, and leaves no room for what you actually want from kids, which is exploration, creativity, emotional intelligence, curiosity, things that actually you need to be in the world, especially now, are the functions that pressure suppress.
Mm.
And so it has to begin here
Mm-hmm.
with that feeling of modeling compassion for oneself, modeling the idea that the A plus isn't necessary to be good enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is, for me, has been a lot of work on my own, like, oh, I'm showing up like this in this scenario when a student is really talking back. It's really hard for me. And to really look at, okay, how can I connect to myself in that? Because that's one of the hardest places for me to connect. And well-being in your work that you do has that course. I know it sounds like a plug, and it is, because all of these things have been profoundly impactful in my life and how I show up. So that trauma sensitive education is really important so I understand how I show up in the classroom, and well-being in your work has showed me be able to actually show up in a different way in my classroom.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow. Heidi, I just want to say thank you to you for all the work you do in the world
Mm.
and for bringing these thoughts, concepts, and therapeutic presence into pedagogy and being such a leader in this regard. So I am grateful for you and excited for all the things we may create together in the future.
Right back at you. I feel so grateful. And another thing I've learned that I'm stepping into now is that I am now embodying the knowledge to be able to carry it forward. I felt like I had to practice for a really long time, and now I feel I'm still practicing. It's till our last breath, as you say, and to be able to do that in my own as well as alongside you and your and everybody at Relationship Matters. I'm just profoundly grateful for all the that you've taught me and that we continue to teach each other.
Mm, thank you.